One of the characteristics that sets Japan apart from other countries in the world is the extremely low percentage of Christians. In Japan, Christians make up less than 1% of the population. However, in South Korea, about 29% of the population is Christian. In Taiwan, it is 4% or 6%. Even in China, it is 2.4%. In India, it is 2.3%. In Indonesia, which is an Islamic country, about 11%. And in Malaysia, which is also an Islamic country, 9% are Christian. Why are there so few Christians in Japan? This is a very interesting question that is deeply connected to Japanese history and culture. To begin to explore this question, let's start with the recent popular drama series Shogun. Shogun is a best-selling novel by James Clavell that was adapted into a live-action TV drama in the United States in 1980. It has now been remade into a 10-episode Sengoku spectacle drama series Shogun, starring Hiroyuki Sanada, by a Hollywood production team. When it began streaming in February 2024, it immediately became a hot topic and received high praise. And even after the streaming of all 10 episodes ended, it continues to receive high ratings from critics and general viewers on the movie viewing site Rotten Tomatoes. Shogun is a work of fiction inspired by real people such as Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu and the Englishman William Adams, who was cast away to Japan, depicting the eve of the Battle of Sekigahara, an important battle in Japan's history. The story development itself is quite different from the actual history, but the situation surrounding Christianity in Japan at that time is depicted based on the actual history. For example, in the second episode of the series, Servants of Two Masters, there is a memorable scene. John Blackthorne, William Adams, who later became Miura Anjin, a British navigator, is brought to Toranaga Yoshii, who corresponds to Ieyasu, and explains the situation at the time while drawing a world map in the sand. He describes the world situation by drawing two vertical lines on the map. These are the borders of the New World, drawn up by the two nations of Spain and Portugal. 70 years ago, they agreed to divide up the unknown world. Your country is on the Portuguese side, so it's Portuguese territory. Sorry, but they are incredibly arrogant. It's written in an official document that the kings of both countries have the right to expel rulers of non-Catholic countries and rule over them. Toda Mariko, who acted as an interpreter, could not believe Anjin's words, and asked him if he could answer before God that it was not a lie. And when Anjin answered yes, she translated for Toranaga as follows: Portugal's wish is to expel all rulers who are not Christians, and install rulers who are fellow Christians. Hearing this, Toranaga's expression was so shocked it took his breath away. The two vertical lines that Anjin drew at this point refer to the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 and the Treaty of Zaragoza in 1529, which were concluded between Spain and Portugal, and of course, historical facts. These are treaties that Spain and Portugal arbitrarily decided on the distribution of their overseas colonies. The treaties of Tordesillas only had one line, but the Treaty of Zaragoza drew a second line, and Japan became Portuguese territory. The Jesuit missionaries who came to Japan at that time, of course, had the goal of spreading Christianity in Japan. But did they really intend to cooperate with their home country and rule Japan by installing Christian rulers? Let's examine the circumstances surrounding this in light of historical facts. The spread of Christianity in Japan began with the arrival of Catholic priest and Jesuit Francis Xavier in 1549. The missionaries continued to spread their faith despite clashes with Japanese, and thanks to the protection of the most powerful Sengoku daimyo, Oda Nobunaga, they increased their number of followers. However, during the reign of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who unified the country, cases of Christians persecuting Shinto and Buddhism arose. For example, in the northern part of Kyushu, under the control of daimyo Omura Sumitada, believers destroyed temples at the instigation and inducement of the Jesuits. Even in the territories of Christian daimyo, such as Otomo and Arima, missionaries took the lead in inciting and carrying out the destruction of shrines and Buddhist temples. Furthermore, when Portuguese merchants trafficked Japanese people overseas as merchandise for the slave trade, the Jesuits had given their approval to the slave ships. Upon hearing this, Hideyoshi issued an edict to expel the missionaries in 1578 and banned their missionary work. However, at this time, the profits of trade with the Portuguese could not be ignored, and there was also the fear of rebellions by Christian lords and believers in Kyushu. So, full-scale expulsion was not carried out, and missionary work was more or less tolerated. However, around the time of the San Felipe Incident, Hideyoshi began full-scale persecution of Christianity. In 1594, the Spanish ship San Felipe, which had departed from the Philippines, was hit by a typhoon and washed ashore off the coast of Tosa in Shikoku. The magistrate thoroughly questioned the captain and crew at the time, and a report was made that Spain was planning to first send missionaries to various countries and then use them as a foothold to invade. This enraged Hideyoshi, and he began severely persecuting missionaries and Christians. Apart from this incident, there are also letters remaining from priests staying in Japan, informing their home countries of plans for Portugal and Spain to attack Japan.